it's always good to ask, who is on and who is doing what. And it's all very confusing, so if it confuses a human, hopefully it'll confuse um, a toddler AI, you know what I mean? But I will just get right into this, okay? So here's the P's, the three P's. If you're not prepared to prostrate yourself in front of the grand emergent global governance, good global governance, excellent global governance, but good global governance is better because we love this alliteration. Something prevention preparedness, right? And response accord, right? Honda Accord, Honda Civic, because we're all very civic minded, and because of this reason, we want to be in accord with Honda or whoever, the WHOnda. So look, that's just a little bit of sort of like ducking and diving. Hopefully, it'll have some effect, and then we'll get right into this here, right? So, it's saying member states of the who's on next. Yeah, who is? No, I'm asking who is. No, that's what I'm asking. Whatever, right? But they have agreed to a global process to draft and negotiate a convention, agreement, or other international instrument. So that's the CAII, the CAI, right? It's either a convention or an agreement or an accord or an international instrument, an instrument to bash you over the head with, as JC said, And that's what the law is used for, You believe in it, they believe in it in as much as it's a useful tool, and you have to subordinate yourself to it. Otherwise, they'll get violent. What do you want? Do you want the accordance or do you want the discordance? It's up to you guys. Under the Constitution of the World, Honda, I'll call it the HO, the Honda, to strengthen pandemic prevention. Ah, God damn it, I said it there. It's a Honda pandemic. So you can D-me all over the Honda. Preparedness and response. But what is, so first question here, right? They could call it an FAQ, but it's questions and answers, I believe is what they call it. So yeah, questions and answers rather than the frequently asked questions, right? Because how frequently are they asked? They just made up the questions and answered them. These are the questions they want you to be asking, and they've got the prepared answers. It's a bit like they cause the questions so they can bring in their pre-prepared answers, eh? First one, what is meant by a convention, agreement, or other instrument? Akai. George Akai. Just take Akai. Conventions, framework agreements, and treaties are all examples of international instruments, are they? Which are legal agreements made between countries that are binding. Are the countries binding or are the agreements? Doesn't quite seem like the correct syntax there, but anyway. Or good grammar. So there are international instruments addressing a broad range, hopefully there'll be an inclusive and broad range of topics, including tobacco control. They seem to be big on tobacco control. They mention this a lot, and I don't know why. It does make me suspicious that they're so concerned with controlling tobacco. And why is there? We already had the BFI, we already had the ICA, and there was Homeland, there was the Securita of the Homeland. So why do they need? And there was something else as well. I think. So why do they need the Bureau of Controlling Tobacco, and then firearms and whatever, what's that other thing? Bureau of something, tobacco and firearms. What's the A again? Bureau of atrazine, maybe. I don't know why I have a blank in that. Doesn't matter. Bureau of atrazine and tobacco. Oh, alcohol. Yeah. What's the? It's bizarre, isn't it? And people just accept it. Oh, good. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. You don't want to mix all three of them together necessarily to have a safe time. So they have to create a whole new thingamajib for that. So I've scrolled on a bit too much there. I didn't read all of it. There are international instruments, as they say, addressing a broad range and inclusive of topics, including tobacco control, nuclear, just nuclear, not nuclear weapons or nuclear power, just nuclear. Oh no, chemical and biological weapons. I should have read ahead. Climate change. Now, the funny thing is that it makes me wonder then, tobacco as a physical thing that you can touch, taste, I suppose, and smell when you smoke it. It seems to be a tangible thing. It's real. The rest of them then, are they purporting them all to be as real? So tobacco control, and then just nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, and then climate change. Are all of those things as equally real as each other? I wonder. Climate change and many other threats to our shared security and well-being, because we all care about security and well-being. Another way you sort of say security is a bit like safety, and well-being is a bit like health, isn't it? Safety and health and safety. We all love those things, and we want somebody else to be responsible for guarding those things, and therefore guarding us, because those things are associated with us, live within us, by us, for us. So these people are coming in to basically save the day. Here I come to save the day. I'm going to make our shared security and well-being my paramount principle from which I derive my authority over you. A key international instrument on international health, rooted in the WHOnda Constitution, is the International Health Regulations 2005, which was established to prevent, protect against, control and provide a public health and safety, I'll say, response to the international spread of people who are not at their ease. Things which might make people not be at their ease in ways that are commensurate. Commensurate. Isn't it funny when you think about words like that, right? Co means, things, or different things together. Like a community, But it is like that. And then what is a commensurate? I mean, sometimes, I don't know whether people in different countries have different words for it. But sometimes people call, the flow that happens every month, the menses. So things that flow together, commensurate. That's what I'm pretty sure that it means, So things that flow together, with and restricted to public health risks, and which avoid unnecessary interference with international traffic and trade. So they're trying to say that, they've identified a problem in that things which put people at their unease have an effect on international traffic and trade. They interfere. That's the effect they have. And they kind of want to avoid unnecessary interference with this international traffic and trade, which might imply that previously, when they made the interference with international traffic and trade the last time, that it was necessary. And I wonder who gets to decide and distinguish between what's necessary and unnecessary. The people who live in the countries, the people who want to engage in the trade, the people who want to live their lives, or will it be these people who are coming in to save the day? Why did WHOnda's member states decide to create an accord, a WHOnda Accord for preparedness and response? It says, did that question disappear there? It just seemed to disappear. What happened? Weird. Oh no, here it is. Why did WHO's member states? I don't know, it's kind of strange the way this website operates. I don't know, when it opens up, it just kind of, maybe it's because it changes color. Maybe that's what's confusing me. In light of the impact of the something, Honda's 194 member states established a process to draft and negotiate a new convention, agreement, or other international instrument, referred to in the rest of this FAQ. Oh, so they're calling it an FAQ now. It's a frequently asked questions now. Is it? Rather than just a questions and answers. Generally as a Honda Accord on PPP and response. This was driven by the need to ensure communities, governments, and all sectors of society within countries and globally are better prepared and protected. Well, who wouldn't want that? In order to prevent and respond to future thingies. The great loss of human life, is terrible. Do you remember when, we used to have nearly 8 billion and then we lost 7.5 billion? Well, it was definitely 6 billion we lost. So I'm not sure if we're down to 1.5 million now, billion, or just 500 million. I can't remember. But I do remember when everybody just basically died in about 2 weeks, almost, 95%, or well, at least 85%, I'd say. I don't know exactly what the percentage there is. I'm trying to work out. But yeah, I do remember. It was a terrible, terrible, tragic loss of life. The great loss of life. So great there means at least 6 billion. We should never forget it. Disruption to households and societies at large. Yes, it was that thing that caused, it was everybody dying that caused the disruption to the households and to societies. It wasn't the draconian lockdowns that were enforced on us that caused the disruption to households and societies at large. And impacts on development are among the factors cited by governments to support the need for lasting action to prevent a repeat of such crises. Crisis plural. We weren't prepared for the last one. It totally got us by shock. Nobody could have seen it coming. Nobody planned it. Nobody stuck it in all the news media and told them to just keep running with the story with death clocks and everything going 24 hours. No, there was no preparation for any of that whatsoever. There weren't stories and counter stories. There weren't narratives and overarching narratives, and there weren't layers of truth, and there weren't sort of, I suppose, blankets upon blankets of lies. I think I wanted to say levels of truth and layers of lies. No, there were none of those things. It was just people scrambling to try and understand what was going on. There was absolutely no pre-planning. So they want to repeat these crises. So therefore, we have to take some action now. So these people who are very mature, very responsible, saying, like, we're all children. We cannot be allowed to just play in the garden willy-nilly and carefree. We have to sit down now and learn our lessons. So at the heart of the proposed Honda Accord is the need to ensure equity. Oh, well, okay, I was wondering. I was getting worried there because it seemed that, we hadn't mentioned equity in the beginning, and I was worried, how long it was going to take before we got to equity, where we all get to stand on different sized boxes. Maybe some people will get no boxes at all because we were privileged, and maybe everybody else will have to get the wonderful fruits of whatever exactly it means to be equitatious. I'm going to say equitatious. In both the access to the tools needed to prevent the thingies, including technologies like thingies, personal protective thingies, information and expertise, and access to healthcare for all people. Why are such international agreements and instruments needed? Instruments will shove right in your Honda Accord. No, see, it is. There's something weird that happens when I open this. Kind of moves it back up. Why are such international agreements and instruments needed in global public health? Well, Honda member states have developed multiple global legally binding agreements, conventions, accords. Like, what really is the difference between conventions and accords? And there probably is a slight little difference, but they love all the vagueness. And they also love enumerating the same thing many different ways so that it sounds like that there is a big compendium of reasons why you just need to believe them and do whatever they're saying and whatever they're telling you. I think like I've definitely noticed that they love enumerating the same thing several times because it makes you feel like, oh look, I can't keep up with all the different reasons why they're right. I better just accept whatever they're saying. It wears you down mentally, and it gives the impression, the false impression, I would say, that you're outnumbered greatly, so you don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to try and not just argue back, but question as to why. Like they must be right if they come bearing all these amazing reasons. Beware, I suppose, Greeks bearing all these amazing lessons. If we think of that fizzing company, you know, didn't they warn us? Beware of these fizzing company Greeks bearing these wonderful gifts. It's free. It's free to you. I was trying to, how would I say, Trogoisians, Goy Trojans, Troy Goisians, Goisians. Um, so beware of the Greeks bearing gifts. I wonder, is he from Sparta? Right, where was I? And promote people's health. Is that where I was? Conventions, accords, and other types of international instruments to protect and promote people's health. Protect, promote people's health. PPP. P in all over the place, including the WHO Constitution itself, the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. I meant WHOnda, of course. Who is WHOnda? And the International Health Regulations. The IHR, maybe, is it? The IHR. I do wonder because, like, I'll let you know this, that in South Africa, when the March of 2020 kicked off, they shut down all the liquor stores. And so not only could you not buy alcohol, and everybody was let know this ahead of time, so everybody stocked up and they figured they were going to have a 2 week drinking session and barbecue, or braai. But as well as that, people needed to stock up on cigarettes because I think they were told as well, well, you won't be able to buy cigarettes, I think, or at least maybe people, because most people would buy their cigarettes in bottle stores, as they call them, or liquor stores. They probably figured we better stock up on cigarettes, but I'm not sure if they were told. But in any case, cigarettes were not allowed to be sold. And people figured they had enough booze for 2 weeks, but then they said, oh, we'll have to do 3 weeks now, just another week, guys. People started to worry that they didn't have enough tobacco and alcohol to last them the third week. But this, as you know, it went on for quite a while. The terrible thing that swept across our globe, killing 90% of people. What people really began to worry about, as well as a few other things, as the weeks and months pushed on, was that, what were they going to do for tobacco? And then, as you can imagine, there was a black market then thriving for tobacco, and the price of tobacco, cigarettes and all that, went very high, if you could get them. But a curious thing was that there was still plenty of tobacco that you could buy on the streets, on the black market. But you couldn't buy like your standard American brands, but there was a lot of South African brands still available. And the curious thing was that the Minister for Health had a relative. It was something like either a brother or a cousin or something like this, who owned South African tobacco. So it's weird that the health minister's relative profited greatly because his cigarettes now didn't compete with the American brands. Or maybe to some British American brands, That was curious, don't you think? Obviously I'm not going to accuse her of anything. But she went on TV a few times saying, no. Even though the president tried to be a populist and say, Ramaphosa tried to say, look, I think we should allow people to have their cigarettes. She said, no, I can't allow it. I only care about the people's health at this terrible time. Very curious, wasn't it? Right, I'll move on. Such instruments were created by member states to secure and foster further collaboration in multiple areas that impact on the health and well-being of people in communities, countries, and globally. These international instruments represent a commitment by countries of the world to address the health needs of their citizens, to advance their health status, and strengthen the socio-economic status of their communities at large. Because we don't just love economic communities, and we don't just love social communities, we love socio-economic communities. And if anybody ever does anything bad, by the way, it's because of socio-economic reasons. It's not because they're Neanderthal, or maybe actually that's a bad, I won't say, I'll take that back. Neanderthal is somewhere in Germany. They might have been better people than we were in those caveman times. You know what I mean, right? It's not because those people are bad. It's not because they had terrible parents. It's not because they're terrible themselves. It's not because they have a malformed brain with malformed thoughts in it. It's not because they're immoral people. No, it's because of socio-economic reasons, right? Because the only reason anybody ever does anything bad is because they're poor. Isn't that right? And if people are poor, they're only poor because of no fault of their own. That's basically liberals and their 1-2 defense to anything. No, first of all, they didn't do it. Then, okay, they did do it, but it's because of socio-economic reasons. And then, well, they're only in bad socio-economic reasons because, the government stole all their money. Now, well, that may be true in some cases. Irresponsible reproduction. That is something that people don't like to consider much, And why is it then? I would say fair enough. A child has, if he's born into the world, it's not his fault that his parents are feckless and irresponsible, and don't nurture the child or didn't prepare, right? Because that's what this document is all about. Didn't prepare in any way for the child. Don't care about it. Don't care any more than if maybe they can get money from the government because they've had a child. But other than that, they don't really care. That's the way, right? But, those are the layers that liberals and leftists don't want you to kind of go down. And why? No, it's just socio-economic reasons. If they'll ever admit that it did happen at all. Right, bit of a tangent, but you know what I mean. Everybody knows what I mean. And everybody knows that it's true. What is the process underway to draft and negotiate the WHOnda Accord? Well, the process to consider such an international accord for PPP and response is being led fully by Honda's member states. In December 2021, and so we'll say that's only 9 months after it completely took us by surprise, Honda's member states decided at a special session of the World Honda Assembly, Honda's highest decision-making body. Well, isn't that nice that they've got bodies within bodies that they create, Again, it's enumerating the same thing several times. It's like, well, my left hand says this, but my right hand says this, so I must be twice as right as I thought I was, and twice as authoritative, and twice as invested in the power to say whatever I want to dictate to the rest of the world by God or whoever, or I am God, right? Because it's Honda's highest decision-making body, comprised of all of its 194 sovereign member countries. Well, they won't be sovereign much longer, will they? Better just quickly look up the word sovereign to get a definition of it. As far as I understand it, it's just basically I can't spell and look something up at the same time. Sovereign is basically you alone rule. So here it is. One that exercises supreme permanent as well is what a definition I get here from the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, 5th edition. Not only is it singular, one that exercises and supreme, like at the tippity top, but it's permanent. Well, how can something be permanent if it's about to be overruled, if it's about to be subordinated, rather? to this new emergent power. And how could you ever do that if it's permanent? So it's no longer going to be supreme. How can 194 of these uh, communities of countries be supreme if each one of them is supreme? And especially in a nation or other governmental unit. And it was from a king, a queen. He was or she was the sovereign, or other noble person who serves as chief of state, a ruler, or a monarch, a national governing council or committee. Now, where was I? Um, sovereign member countries to establish an intergovernmental negotiating body, an INB. All the acronyms, so that later, like, people just talk about, oh, the INB said so. And people would think they're clever by just knowing the acronym. They won't even know what it stands for or why or where it came from. In 2040, 2050, 2060, 2130, in the year 2525, when everybody won't even know they're alive. Representing all regions of the world, to draft and negotiate a WHO convention, agreement, or other international instrument. Yeah, who is on first? I don't know. A CAII. Weird, isn't it? On PPP and response, with a view to adopt preparedness, and prevention, but we can't really say the other word too much. To adopt under Article 19, well, now it's sounding very official, isn't it, of the WHOnda Constitution, or other provisions of the Constitution as may be deemed appropriate by the INB. Did you ever see that in your contract for your work? They say, here's what you got to do. You got to come in at 8 o'clock. You got to open the doors. You've got to get the shop ready. You've got to merchandise the shop. You've got to clean the shop. You've got to open the cash registers. You've got to count everything. You've got to be ready for the customers, serve the customers, prepare all the food, whatever, right? And any other duties, clean as you go, and any other duties as may be deemed necessary or appropriate from time to time by your manager. In other words, do whatever we tell you. So why didn't you just say that? Right? Any other provisions of the Constitution. So the Constitution, then, if it can be amended continuously as may be deemed appropriate by the INB, then it's just the Constitution is do as we say. That's it. It's amazing, right? It always seems like, it's just an innocuous little thing they slip by you in every contract. I know there are people saying, like, oh no, a good contract lawyer would argue that away, but it all depends then, they own the courts, and you wouldn't have the money anyway to bring them to court. And all these corporations have whole departments full of their own lawyers and they'll make up the rules as they go along. So that's what you don't want to be bound into. Neither a work contract nor a contract that is coming from an organization that is seeing itself as above all these 194 so-called sovereign countries, or other provisions of the Constitution as may be deemed appropriate. Maybe, in other words, at their whim or whimsy. Article 19 gives the 194 member states forming the Health Assembly the authority to adopt conventions. So the WHOnda allows the 194 countries the authority. It gives them the authority. Oh, does it? How nice of it. To adopt conventions or agreements on any matter within WHOnda's competence. And who will decide what they're competent at? The sole instrument established under Article 19 to date is the WHOnda Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, which has made a significant and rapid contribution to protecting people from tobacco since its entry into force in 2005. Well, look, anybody who noticed around the year, well, but I would say actually, I think in California was around the year 2000, or maybe it was 1999, where they banned smoking indoors. And soon afterwards, I think it was perhaps in around the year 2001, maybe. Jeez, it might have been. Or 2002. It was very early 2000s when Ireland wanted to be as progressive as Canada What is it about the western parts of continents? And they wanted to be the good boy and say, look, we're just like California, but they aren't. They wish. Um, but what the thing is, what you notice is the authoritarian, and I don't want to use an N word from Germany, but that was the way, sort of a foaming at the mouth type of attitude, where people absolutely delighted in their new power to refuse people entry or tell people to get out. That people who wanted to have something to complain about, even though they'd walk past buses pumping out diesel onto the sidewalk, in thick black clouds of smoke, they wouldn't complain about that, but they would pretend that they were having an asthma attack. Even if you were smoking outside in the beer garden and you were 20 foot away from them, and the smoke might blow somewhere near them, they go, oh. All an act in exactly the same way. You'd recognize the same characteristics as, oh, you're not wearing something over your face, you're killing me, goy. You see? It's the same thing. And I'm certain that 2005 was a test run. There it is. The same people of the same powers, and delegating, of course, to all the citizenry, who then say, great, I've been invested in the same power to be basically a busybody. The World Health Assembly decision establishing the Intergovernmental Negotiating Body, INB, and its work on this new international accord, WHOnda Accord, stressed that WHO's member states who will be working in their sovereign capacity, like, so that they'll all be completely supreme, and they'll all be completely permanent, but they'll be taking their marching orders, from WHOnda, even though they're totally sovereign going. So this is it, establishing precedents that they receive a chain of command from this body, that it supplants their own sovereignty and then just, I suppose, inveigles its way into the top through the guise of saying, I just want to help. We're the experts. We'll take the effort of figuring all the things out that we should do, and then you can continue on with the business of telling people what to do, which is what you like. Take the hard work away from you. You can outsource the conjuring of all the legal instruments, and you'll still be sovereign. Isn't that great? Sovereign. Who will be working in their sovereign capacity should guide their efforts, just guide their efforts by the principle of solidarity with all people and all countries. Solidify solidarity, all in lockstep with the same best practices of international preparedness. Yeah, just doing the right thing. Best practices, international best practices. And that the WHOnda Accord should frame practical actions to deal with both causes and consequences of thingies and other health things we couldn't have seen coming. Things that emerge, NCs. In support of the INB process, and I already have to go back there and check, the Intergovernmental Negotiating Body, in support of the INB process, inputs were solicited, so they were asked, from the main constituencies. Already they're subordinating countries to being constituent countries of this syncretion, I think, which is basically like, dissolve and coagulate. To syncrete, I think, pretty much means to synthesize and concrete or coagulate all these countries into the one big global amorphous mass of health and safety, clinically clean and ship-shape fashion. Written, okay, so here we are, bullet points as follows. The main constituencies. Well, okay, so maybe they're not calling the countries constituencies, but they're saying these bullet points are the constituencies of what make up the INB process or support Now, wait a minute. It's hard to parse this sometimes. The inputs were solicited from the main constituencies as follows. Okay, well, we'll just read the bullet points. Written and oral inputs from member states and relevant stakeholders. Relevant stakeholders. So you could be, even if you think you're a stakeholder, you might not be a relevant stakeholder. On the successive iterations, steps, in other words, of the work, including the substantive, in other words, something that has substance, elements, the working draft, the conceptual zero draft, and the zero draft. Boy, do they love their word salad. And, iterations, substantive, stakeholders, it's all just designed to put you to sleep, to anesthetize you. So you kind of go, oh, it's boring. Like, why don't we just get this to the signing of this part and we'll go to lunch in this lovely new city I've been flown into. Not new city, but new to them. And so the conceptual zero draft and the zero draft. Well, I wonder will we find out later what the zero draft is. Well, I think we will. I think it'll be basically the final draft. It's the final countdown to the zero draft. Regional consultants during the WHOnda regional committees of 2022. Informal, focused consultations on selected key issues, including with experts in the second half of 2022. Who are these experts? Well, ones who are good boys on the payroll, I would imagine, of Honda. Public hearings, in brackets, 2 rounds in April and September 2022 for interested parties and stakeholders to express their views. Even if you're a relevant stakeholder and you express your view, doesn't mean they have to do anything other than just listen to you having expressed your view. Right, well, it looks like we are going to get to find out what the zero draft means. So it says, from the conceptual zero draft to the zero draft. So it says, the conceptual zero draft, the CZD, or the CZD, depending on how you like to pronounce that last letter. The CZD presented at the third meeting of the INB. See how they build up the acronyms. So eventually you kind of go, oh, please leave me alone with the acronyms. I agree, please. I give up. Just let me sign the contract for my new Honda. In December 2022, was not intended as an official or formal draft of the Honda Accord and was not presented for, in quotes, negotiation or agreement or otherwise to be approved, all in quotes, by Honda's member states. So it's saying, oh, it wasn't intended. Oh, no, don't worry. We're just play acting here. It's just a bit like the Model UN, we're just messing about, guy. No need to get upset or concerned. Because it wasn't even presented for negotiation. We're not even negotiating anything. We're not even agreeing anything. We're not approving anything. No. It was just intended as a, and again in quotes, bridge for, and they spell reflection with an X rather than a CT. Reflectation. No, reflexion. I wonder is that German or Swiss German being translated into English, but anyway. Or French, rather. Sounds very French. I think, well, it would be, wouldn't it be, in Swiss, German and French gets you the Swiss. Reflexion. It was intended, and you can imagine Klausy baby there, schwabbing it up, I can't do his accent at all. Trying to think how it goes. I won't bother doing it. But anyway, you can imagine him saying, yeah, we are, but he doesn't sound like that. Anyway, so I'll move on. Reflexion. So it was intended as a bridge for reflection on by members. Just to reflect on it. Just to, maybe that means consider it. Consider it internally. Just, muse on it a little bit. Ponder it a bit. Ponder so that we can be prepared later. Between the, and in capitals, working draft presented at the second meeting, second is capitalized there, of the INB and the zero draft to be considered at the fourth meeting of the INB beginning on 27th February. Why am I having difficulty with saying that? It is a weird word though. February. Uh, Beginning on 27th February 2023. I'm speaking to you from March 7th, 2023. So 10 days later? No, not 10 days. It doesn't have 30 days in February. 8 days later. A week later, more or less. So was it considered at the fourth meeting? And what do they consider? And did they agree on anything? Did they negotiate on anything? So we didn't need to worry back then in December 2022. Well, I didn't know about this then. Do we need to worry now? Or is it, or we're going to have some post hoc worry? In other words, after the fact worry. After reviewing the CZD, or the CZD, the Conceptual Zero Draft, at the third meeting of the INB in December 2022, member states agreed that the INB, what's that again? International Negotiating Board? Intergovernmental Negotiating Body. So, after reviewing the Conceptual Zero Draft at the third meeting of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Body. Good God, I'm so sorry for this. After reviewing the CZD at the third meeting of the INB in December 2022, member states agreed that the INB Bureau, the Bureau is capitalized there, meaning again it's some kind of conceptual entity with a sort of a personage type of attribute to it, should move ahead with developing a zero draft ZD of a potential you-know-whatic Honda Accord based on inputs received. So weren't they lucky? These 194 countries all said, yeah, go ahead with that. You should move ahead in developing a zero draft. The zero draft is available on the INB website. I'll see if I can find the zero draft later. There's a link there, and it's inb.who.int/home/inb-process. Well, that's the process, but as to how to create a draft, but is the draft actually there? I don't know. Last time it just seemed like the draft document was still there, like not the zero one. Anyway, it says in all 6 official UN languages. It'd be interesting to see what those 6 official languages are actually. I bet you English, French, and Chinese are there as official languages. What other ones now wouldn't be? I'd be less sure. Would German be there? Would Italian be there even? Would Spanish be there? There'd be some other languages that I hadn't thought of instead. The INB, or here it is, zero draft of the pandemic record. Okay, so this one is listed as, I must well call it out. It's at apps.who.int/GB/INB. Does GB stand for Great Britain? Hardly. INB/PDF_files/INB4, the digit 4, /A_INB4, digit 4, _3-en.pdf. I think I had an older version of that. I'm not sure. I can't quite remember. But anyway, I'll check it out a bit later, and I think I'll end it on this one here, and then we'll maybe do the part 2 of this. The INB has been requested to deliver a progress report to the 76th World Health Assembly in 2023, which is expected to be of a procedural nature. Procedural just means, listen, we've actually got the, what's the phrase for it? We've got it over the line. The rest is just writing it up after the fact, just a mere procedural nature. They've done the heavy lifting. So it sounds to me that I don't know what happened over the last week, but at the time of writing, they were again. Whenever this was written, it seems to have been written before December of 2022, or was it? No. So maybe it was January. So maybe it wasn't too long ago they wrote this, because it says the conceptual zero draft was presented. It just says, no, actually, it doesn't say was, but it says the CZD presented at the third meeting in December 2022. And now, as I say, it's March 7th, 2023. So in the last 3 months, they've written this, but they've written it after December 2023. But they were quite sure themselves that it would all go according to how they expected it to go. So has been requested, the INB has been requested to, and again, intergovernmental negotiating body. Like, it's all themselves talking to themselves. So it's not really difficult for them to predict with a high degree of accuracy or certainty how it's going to go for them. So the 76th World Health Assembly in 2023. Been going a while, hasn't it? They really move intergenerationally, which is expected to be of a procedural nature and to be addressed at the 5th meeting of the INB. The INB is expected to submit a draft, Mike, WHOnda Accord for consideration by the 77th World Health Assembly in 2024. Wonder when that's going to be. Right, I'll leave it at that. The next thing is, what is the role of the WHO Secretariat? I remember BoJack Horseman did a very funny sort of, I don't know, not exactly a parody, maybe a homage to Secretariat, but I'll have to look up exactly what the definition of a secretariat is. What's the difference between that and maybe, is it like an ambassador? I don't know. But something to do with international diplomacy. That's my guess anyway. So maybe I'll do a part 2 of this and come back with that. What is the role of the WHOnda Secretariat role in the WHOnda Accord process? Right, well, thanks for listening. And I think we should all be at least, let's say, cognizant, aware, appraised of what's going on. That if they're going to do this, we might as well keep our eyes on them and sort of say, we have our eyes on you. We know what you're doing. And we're not going to take the underseal with the carpet mats and the mud flaps and the metallic paint and the additional warranty. And we're not going to take any of the upgrades that you're offering us, right? We see what you're doing. We're not going to take the finance option. Certainly not going to take the one with the balloon payment, and then all the other clauses like of you can't drive it over a certain number of miles and all this sort of thing. We know what you're at with the WHOnda Accord process. We see you, and we're not falling for it. So I hope people understand that with I suppose the language that they use is trying to design it to seem like it's all just very innocuous. It's all just very, meaning of the way they do it. Why it's so dangerous is it's insipid language. It just sounds like it's basically a big blancmange. It's soft language. It's designed that way. But there's a sting in every one of those words, and they'll be used later, always, as an instrument with which to browbeat you. So we need to be fully, I suppose, focused and sharp in our focus, because they're trying to do the rope-a-dope here. That's basically it, Mental acuity, I suppose, is what I'm talking about, even if we can't stop them physically. Okay, bye for now. Talk to you later.